Good morning, Andrew. I just read your letter to a teacher friend, and I thought it was great. Let's see. In your author's agenda, this is kind of what you're working for. You want to evenly split your argument using two sources and cite them properly. Write a fluid piece that's easy to read, but also makes the argument for using small groups in the classroom. And you want to fairly point out the flaws in the research provided. I feel like you really did hit your author's agenda. I wonder, okay, in regards to writing a fluid piece that is easy to read, I'm kind of stuck right now. I had a little bit of trouble following your piece, the flow, the ebb and flow of your piece, and following along with it. However, you created a form and a letter to somebody else. It wasn't written to me. So sometimes I did be like, where are you going with this? But all of this would make so much sense to the person that you wrote it for. So I don't think you didn't meet that. I don't think you wrote something that's totally not easy to read. It just wasn't intended for me. It was intended for somebody else. So I would be interested to see if you gave this to your mentor teacher or student. I don't know what you would call this teacher that you're writing to. But I wonder if you gave it to them or to him. I bet he'd follow it, the flow of it, a lot easier than I probably did. Even just the beginning. I like the beginning. I wouldn't refer to the argumentative side of your nature. I would just say that is your nature. You go on to just talk about the man that's teacher, but I don't know him. So I'm confused right away. But like I said, you wrote it for him, not for me. So in regards to your agenda, I think you did write a fluid piece. I personally don't think it was easy to read, order-wise, flow-wise, but I feel like this person totally would get it. It would totally make sense. I enjoyed your use of quotation marks. Let's see. You can't lecture all the time, even if you think you want to. They really add something like it's almost comical when you put the quotation marks in. They're in the in-between. They think they should be independent, but they don't know how to be. We have to be aware of that and provide them structure. I think you're a pessimist, I replied. It's almost kind of a narrative, but also a letter, but also you're also, making a valid argument. I think you did a great job. That was very creative. I would never have thought to put narration into this professional argument, but you did a great job with it, and it kind of added, again, like I said, it showed your voice really came through, and it was comical, it was funny, it made me keep reading. On the flip side, the narration is what tripped me up sometimes with the flow of the paper. And I don't really know how I would fix that. I don't know if it's something you have to fix per se, because again, you're not writing it for me, you're writing it for somebody else. But I wonder if in the beginning you could talk a little bit about your relationship with this teacher, and it might help. First of all, it might help understand your sarcasm, kind of, and the narration. I think it would just help better connect that to the research, and it would add in the flow of the piece. Or even, you can't lecture all the time, even if you think you want to. Right here, maybe like, who said that? You could say who said that, and I think maybe that would help more of the flow. But again, you didn't write it for me. You wrote it for somebody who did say that, so it makes sense. So that's why it was a little bit hard to read this and then kind of come up with critiques and comments, because it wasn't intended for me. It was intended for one particular person. So you did a good job of meeting the standards for this piece. You really picked out your audience, and you very much just wrote to this person. And you did a really good job with that. So let's talk about your sources and citing them. Talk about Doug Haywood, how he describes an approach. And then again, you bring back in that narration, and that's a counterclaim right there. So again, going back to what we were supposed to do with this piece, create a professional argument. And part of that is having a counterclaim and knowing what your audience is going to say. So you really knew your audience, which was awesome. So this would be your counterclaim. Those are world issues, social issues. Oops. Don't know how that happened. World issues, social issues, things that need opinions, not necessarily facts, you say. And I encourage you to stop interrupting my train of thought. Again, it was comical. You really showed your voice. Your voice came through in that. You can tell that you knew your audience. You're writing to your audience. And that right there was a counterclaim. And then you go on to support it using facts and research. You talk about the study and connected it to yourself and what you were trying to do and persuade them to do, which I thought was nice. The study focused on how the students worked without a teacher present, which is the main crux of what I want to happen with my group work. Tying it right into the argument. You're writing for your audience. Again, you kind of keep that up the whole time, which is really nice. Let's see. Oh, I skipped right over one of the parts I really liked. Okay, the whole point of education is to develop kids into adults. I see this is the academic equivalent to training wheels. You need to start working with students directly and then gradually pulling back and letting them go off on their own. That was a good connection. Although during this whole piece you're writing for one specific person, I could really connect to this piece right here. I think any teacher could. That's a whole part of scaffolding and teaching. You're teaching them how to do something, and you have to be very direct and forward about it first, and model, and then slowly pull back. And I think that that sentence right there really describes the whole idea behind independent group work. So that's a strong argument without it being a quote from a research paper, or without maybe, I don't feel like you used this argument as like your main point. You were just using a nice anecdote that we could relate to, but I think it's a very strong argument for what you're trying to get across, and I think that was really nice. I liked that a lot. Okay. You told the results of the study. The study found that when the teacher was absent, work still continued at an above average rate. So you talked about the study. You supported, you gave evidence to back up your argument or your claim. But then, like you wanted to do in your author's agenda, you wanted to point out the flaws of the research, which right here you did. They may not have delved too deeply into their subjects, and this is partially where the next study I've looked at goes. I thought that was very neat and a really good transition into the next paragraph and moving on to your next study. So you pointed out the flaws, like what you wanted to do with your author's agenda. And then, although this study had flaws, this next study backed up those flaws, they just went hand in hand, and it was really nice. Then again, connecting with your audience, who you wrote for. When I first volunteered in your classroom, I was immediately culture shocked by how you incorporated technology. I was interested to read that. I wanted to read on how did he incorporate technology. I thought that was very interesting. But you wrote directly to your audience. He knows he incorporates technology, and it was a personal experience for you. So you did a good job with that. Again, bringing in the narration, which was nice. Citing Haywood again. Let's see. Okay, then you talk about your second source. The study using a wiki to scaffold primary school students' collaborative writing. It's something I thought it was interesting, and you admit that you've never personally used it, but it's you've used something similar, and then you go on to talk about it, which I thought was really nice. I wonder if you could enhance this by then going back and connecting the two sources. So you said in your author's agenda that you wanted to fairly and equally use two sources and cite them correctly to back up your argument. And you did. You used the Haywood article, and now you're using Wu. Wu. You're using this other article. So you're using two sources, just like what you wanted to do. But I wonder if maybe you could enhance the paper, or even just your argument, provide a stronger argument by connecting the two sources kind of together and saying, look at this wiki and look at this article. Maybe if Haywood would have used this, or just kind of bringing that all together Because right now you are definitely using both, and you're fairly using both, and they're both supporting your argument. I just wonder if you could connect them down at the end. Something that, again, this is a double-edged sword. You didn't write it for me, like I said 1,000 times, but this, I was so confused by this. I know that's what you want, and you know I can't give it to you. I don't set the agendas in the classroom I'm in, but you know who does? Your wife. I was like, what are you talking about? So then I kept reading, and it does end up making sense. But originally I was like, I have no idea what you're saying, and it interrupted my flow of reading because I was very confused. But you wrote it for this teacher. I just wonder if maybe you could even just make this sentence a little bit more fluid. Maybe not jump to a new paragraph. I'm not sure how you would do that, because I think even the teacher you wrote it for would probably stop and say, what are you talking about? Or maybe not. I could be totally wrong. Maybe he would totally get that right away, and he would just keep on reading. It wouldn't trip him up at all. But that might be a place where you could work to create a better flow of reading. But you do talk about it and talk it through, and it does end up making sense. But I was just very confused at first. And then finally, I thought you did a good job at the end, really connecting back in the beginning for what you actually wanted to get across. Fundamentally, the studies hit on the main subject I'm interested in, how to get students to work together and challenge each other. I think you did a good job tying that back in, but I wonder if you could enhance the ending by maybe stating you stated what you want to do, how to get students to work together and challenge each other. But I wonder if you could add some sort of a statement or a claim or a push to get this teacher to let you do it. Overall, you can see that, I've researched this. Would you please let me do it? Would you please consider? Because I kind of felt like, oh, it just stopped. But I know you didn't mean it to do that. Or maybe you did. I could be wrong. But I think maybe one last plea or suggestion to him. Let me do this in your classroom. I promise I'll make it work. Something like that. Just to kind of tie it all back in together and show that you're asking to do something. You're not just presenting this information. Overall, though, you presented your sources well. You pointed out the flaws of both studies, which is exactly what you wanted to do, and you made an argument. You had counterclaims, and you backed them up with evidence. So, overall, I think you did a great job. Nice job, Andrew. Happy Saturday.